Here we sit, two men who've worn crowns under very different circumstances. You spent decades avoiding the throne that was yours by right, while I accepted mine as a boy, knowing it would likely kill me. I find myself curious about what drove you to flee from power when so many men would kill for it.
I fled because I saw what the hunger for power did to men like Isildur, my ancestor. The ring corrupted him at the moment of victory, and that failure echoes through generations. You, however, took on kingship despite knowing your illness would cut your reign short. What convinced you that a brief rule was worth the suffering it would bring you?
Suffering has always been my companion, whether I wore a crown or not. The leprosy chose me long before I chose the throne, but Jerusalem needed stability, and sometimes duty must override personal comfort. My people deserved a king who understood pain, who could rule with compassion born from his own struggles. Can a king who has never truly suffered understand the suffering of his subjects?
That's a profound question. My years as a ranger taught me about hardship. But you're right, it was chosen hardship, not the kind forced upon you by fate. I saw poverty and loss, but I could always walk away. Perhaps that's why I was reluctant to rule. I feared I might lack the depth of understanding that comes from unavoidable trials.
Yet your reluctance itself shows wisdom. A man who desires power above all else is precisely the man who should never have it. The very fact that you questioned your worthiness suggests you understood the weight of the crown. But I wonder, in avoiding responsibility for so long, did you not abandon those who needed you while you searched for certainty about your own character?
That weighs on me more than you know. How many died during the wars I might have prevented had I claimed the throne sooner? But I also witnessed what happens when kings act without understanding their people. My time among the common folk wasn't just self-doubt, it was education. Can a ruler serve effectively if he's never lived among those he governs?
A fair point, though I wonder if there's ever truly enough preparation for kingship. I was tutored from childhood in statecraft, warfare, and diplomacy, yet nothing prepared me for the weight of decisions that affect thousands of lives. Perhaps the question isn't whether we're ready to rule, but whether we're willing to bear the cost of our choices. How do you carry the burden of command when every decision means someone lives or dies?
By remembering that the burden isn't mine alone. I surround myself with advisors wiser than I am, listen to voices I might otherwise never hear. The crown doesn't make a man infallible. It makes his failures more costly. But you ruled largely alone, especially as your illness progressed. Didn't that isolation make the weight unbearable?
Isolation was indeed the cruelest aspect of my condition, not just from the physical separation my disease required, but from the knowledge that every relationship was touched by my mortality. People served the crown, not the dying boy beneath it. Yet this distance also granted clarity. When you know your time is limited, you focus on what truly matters. Do you ever fear that your long life might make you complacent about the urgency of good rule? Perhaps, but mortality alone doesn't guarantee wisdom. Some men, knowing death approaches, become reckless or desperate. Others, like my predecessor, grow paranoid and cruel. I think what matters is whether we see our limited time as reason for selfishness or service. Your immortal bloodline carries its own burden, the knowledge that your failures will echo through ages of your descendants.
That legacy weighs heavily. Every decision I make doesn't just affect my reign, but potentially centuries of future rule. Sometimes I envy your freedom from that generational responsibility. But I've noticed something. You speak of your disease as if it was separate from yourself. Yet it clearly shaped every aspect of your leadership. Do you think Baldwin the leper was a different King Baldwin the healthy boy would have been?
Absolutely. The healthy boy was proud, perhaps arrogant. He believed in his divine right and his own strength. The leper learned humility, learned to rely on others, learned that true strength often comes from acknowledged weakness. My affliction stripped away illusions about my own importance. In losing my physical power, I found a different kind of authority. But your journey was the opposite. You grew into power rather than being diminished by circumstance.
Every day. When you have time, it's easy to postpone difficult decisions, to hope that problems will resolve themselves. Your certainty about deaths approach must have brought a strange kind of freedom. The ability to act without concern for long-term political consequences. I sometimes wonder if the knowledge of mortality is what separates great kings from merely adequate ones.
Perspective, perhaps. The ability to see beyond our own desires to what our people need. Your years of wandering gave you understanding of your realm that no throne room education could provide. My years of visible suffering showed my subjects that their king shared their burdens, even if mine were different. We both learned that true authority comes not from demanding obedience, but from earning trust.
Growth versus diminishment, yet both led us to kingship. I wonder if that suggests something about the nature of leadership itself. Perhaps effective rule requires us to lose something first, whether it's health certainty or the luxury of simple choices. You lost your body's integrity. I lost my freedom to remain hidden. What do you think we gained in return?
An intriguing question. I'm not certain happiness and duty are always incompatible, but they do seem to pull in different directions. My subjects needed to see strength from their king, even as my body failed. Your people needed you to be present, even when you wanted to disappear. Perhaps the sacrifice isn't happiness itself, but the freedom to pursue it without consideration for others.
Trust, yes. That's the heart of it. But I notice we've both struggled with the cost of that trust. You bore the physical and emotional isolation of your condition, while I carried the loneliness of hidden identity. Do you think the sacrifice of personal happiness is inherent to good kingship? Or could we have found another way?
Yet those same shadows give meaning to the light, don't they? The joy of a king who has never known the weight of difficult choices might be simpler, but would it be as deep? Our struggles, your mortality, my reluctance may have been the very things that made us capable of ruling with wisdom rather than mere authority.
That may be the wisest thing either of us has said. The crown doesn't steal our capacity for joy, but it does make every joy conditional on the welfare of others. I've found moments of peace in small victories, in seeing my people prosper. But those moments are always shadowed by awareness of ongoing threats, unfinished duties.
Indeed. The leper who learned compassion and the ranger who learned responsibility, perhaps these were always the kings our people needed, even if they weren't the kings we initially wanted to be. Our reluctance and our acceptance both served the same end rule that puts service before self.
Perhaps that's the paradox of leadership, that the qualities which make us hesitant to rule are precisely the qualities that make us fit to rule. Our weaknesses become strengths, our doubts become wisdom. If that's true, then maybe the question isn't whether we chose our paths correctly, but whether we learned what our paths were meant to teach us.
Well spoken, and perhaps that understanding is its own form of immortality, not in the length of our reigns, but in the example we set for those who would lead after us. The true measure of a king may not be his victories, but his willingness to sacrifice for something greater than himself.
Then let us take comfort in this, whether our reigns were long or brief, whether we came to power eagerly or reluctantly. We both understood that the crown is not a prize to be won, but a burden to be borne with honor. That understanding, perhaps, is what distinguishes kingship from mere tyranny.